Yo, and welcome to my top 75 2024 films of the year. This list comprises of all the movies that I've watched this year that had theatrical or streaming releases specifically for 2024. Now, why 75? Normally I do 50, but I felt like a lot of the movies this year were not the best, so I wanted to see if I could reach a higher number, and 75 sounded pretty nice. And because I'm talking about 75 movies, which is a lot, I'm gonna try and keep it brief. I'm gonna summarize the premise, talk about the craft of it, which includes its writing, directing, the acting, the production. Do I think it was made well? I'll be talking about if I was entertained by the movie, which is a factor that I consider for movies, because sometimes having a good time with a movie can just really put it up higher on the list for me. And finally, do I think about it? I feel like if I'm still thinking about a movie in a positive light, that stands to reason why it deserves its place on the list. All right, and let's get started. Number 75. Hard Home. This is a movie I saw on a plane. It is about a woman who is being chased by a potential murderer or kidnapper, but suddenly turns the tables on him, kind of like Jigsaw from the Saw series, watches him from a bunch of cameras in her own crazy computer room and tells him that he needs to try and escape her house. Pretty great premise and sounded really exciting, but I think the movie was really not made well. I thought the editing was all over the place, has no real sense of pacing, and it was just kind of boring, despite how exciting the beginning was. That's why it's on the bottom. I don't think about this movie at all. Number 74, The Strangers Chapter 1. This is just the worst movie in the franchise. This movie is supposed to be a prequel / setup of the franchise, where a young couple goes on a vacation in the woods, and the town's super weird, and all of a sudden there's these strangers constantly visiting them at home, and eventually they kind of just break in and torture them and yada yada, and it's boring and it's kind of like a snuff film. I'm like, what is the point of this movie? They ruined the iconic line of the film too, so this was just a really nothing movie. I think about the pool scene in The Strangers Prey at Night, and I do not think about anything from this movie. Number 73, Orion and the Dark. It's about a boy who meets the essence of darkness and tries to overcome his fear of the night by going on this adventure with other aspects of dreams and nights and darkness and whatever. It's not even a cute movie. It's not even a fun movie. I thought it was very boring. At the halfway point, the film kind of reveals itself to be narrated by another character, and it's just okay, this is weird. All my immersion and care for the movie is just gone. I think the most surprising thing about this film is that it was written by Charlie Kaufman, being John Malkovich, Synecdoche, New York, Anomalisa adaptation. I don't know if this was a paycheck film or something, but I think I only think about anger when I think about this movie. Number 72, Turtles All the Way Down. If you've seen a movie based off a John Green book before, it's a really harmless teen romantic drama. A young girl who has depression and self-harming tendencies decides to try to find any info on the local rich boy's missing father, but ends up rekindling a friendship and potential romance with the rich boy. Yeah, and then they learn stuff about themselves, yada yada. It's fine. I don't really remember much about it. Number 71, Kraven the Hunter. The supposedly final entry of the Spider-Man movies by Sony without Spider-Man in them. Kraven the Hunter is about... How do I even explain this movie? Boy hates dad, leaves home, lives with animals, becomes hunter and protector of animals, and fights a rhinoceros man. It's not a badly made movie though. The action is actually really entertaining. The violence is a little gratuitous for what I expected out of a superhero film. I openly yelled out loud in the theater, why? A lot of the things in the movies and character motivations don't quite make sense to me. Honestly, I wasn't bored, I was just more so confused.
The Kravenov hit failed. All of our guys are dead.
Number 70, Madam Web. Dakota Johnson plays a woman whose mother was killed by a scientist in the Amazon while studying spiders or whatever, and then she is born with like clairvoyant powers or whatever and tries to save the lives of these 3 young girls who end up, I guess, are gonna be spider people in the future. There aren't any actual superheroes in this movie. It's a horrible movie, but I had such a fun time watching it, mostly because of how insane it was. Jaw dropped, like, how is this a thing? How is this movie possible? Yeah, I think because of how entertaining it is, that's why it's up higher than these other films. I had a much better time with this film than than Craven. It's still horrible. It's really not good. The ADR in this movie is insane though. It is crazy how much ADR is in this movie, like recording dialogue after the the filming, so you can tell that the what you're hearing doesn't match what their like lips are saying and whatnot, or like it's just clearly not part of the scene. And yeah, it's baffling, but it was fun. Number 69, Abigail. It's weird because like the marketing kind of reveals what it's about. A bunch of mercenary and assassin hires are tasked with watching this girl for 24 hours. But turns out something's up with this little girl. It's a neat premise, but I think it takes too long for it to get started. There's a little too much setup. It's not as exciting as the trailer was, in my opinion. And not that the trailer was particularly like groundbreaking. I'm not really thinking about this at all. Did I watch this on a plane? I don't even remember when I watched this. 68, Rebel Moon, Part 2, The Scar Giver. If you've seen Rebel Moon Part 1, it's basically the same thing. It's fine. It looks great. And I think the cast is great. It's a big sci-fi adventure. Part 1 was, oh, they gathered the squad, and Part 2 is, look, we're gonna fight back against this giant empire or whatever. It's a Star Wars-like, for sure, but it's really trying to make me care about characters I barely know about. It's like a worse Dune. Number 67, Dune Part 2. This is gonna be the most controversial one, but I straight up just don't like Dune. I don't like the franchise. I think the board game's cool, the Dune Imperium. Part 1 is about rich boy loses home and joins a culture out in the desert. Part 2 is a rich boy thinks he's a messiah and tries to gentrify the culture. I have to say, craft-wise, I think it's really well made. I think the actors are giving it their all, and it's really well told. It's not for me. Number 66, Mean Girls. So I know this is based off the musical more so than the original film, but after seeing this, I understand why my musical hating friends hate musicals. I thought there was no rhyme or reason as to when the musical numbers popped up, and it was driving me insane. The only actor that I thought could actually sing in this movie was Alui Cravalho, who is the voice of Moana. So, and I didn't even recognize her. I was kind of like, who is this person? They like clearly sing way better than everyone else, and it makes sense. Nothing else about this movie is really memorable to me. Number 65, Night Swim. Night Swim is the first movie I saw this year. I thought it had a really great beginning. It was creepy. I liked the mystery behind this pool that is seemingly killing people. You know, it's like, oh, you swim in this pool, but then you start seeing spirits or hearing voices, and all of a sudden, like, you're not able to get out or whatever, right? But it drops the ball real fast. I feel like a lot of horror movies, once they start revealing why the mystery, the haunting, or the spirit, or the demon, or whatever's happening, that's the break or make of a horror film. It just starts like destroying your immersion. In this case, I definitely was like, I get it, but I don't really care for this. This is not as fun. And yeah, I don't know. I don't really remember all the scares. Like, nothing really stood out to me. The only thing I think about this film is Wyatt Russell's line delivery, and it is the funniest thing. I like laughed out in theaters so hard. For context, a child almost drowns and they barely save him in the nick of time, and all Wyatt Russell says is, "Mom, is he okay?" Number 64, Maboroshi. Maboroshi is a Mario Okada film. If you're familiar, Mario Okada is the writer of Anohana and Anthem of the Heart, 2 of my favorite anime. I like it when people are allowed to just, you know, go balls to the walls and do whatever they want. But for Mario Okada's case, I feel like some of the emotions are not read on screen very well. Maboroshi is about some cosmic event happens to this town, and everyone in the town acknowledges it, but they don't really act upon it. And it sounds mysterious, but there is a mystery as to what's going on here. You're trying to figure out as you're viewing them, like, why does everyone have such a melancholy perspective on their life in this rural town, and why is everyone so defeatist? And I mean, it's a beautiful looking film, and I was really hooked in. I really dug all the characters and their circumstances, but there's a point in the movie where it gets super weird. And those who watch anime, we put on our anime goggles. Like, sometimes, you know, there's some bullshit, and then we're just kind of like, yeah, whatever, that's strange, but, you know, we've seen weirder. This is one of those things where it just kind of goes hard on familial relations, and I'm kind of just like, why is this the emotion to end on? If you're interested in Mari Okada's directorial works, check it out, but if not, I think you can pass. Number 63, Young Woman and the Sea. It's based off the true story of the first woman who swam across the English Channel. Daisy Ridley performs well, it's well made, but that's kind of it. Completely inoffensive. Number 62, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. It's a really fun action movie by Guy Ritchie, but I think it's not as good as any of his other films. I actually didn't know it was a Guy Ritchie film until the credits popped up. And throughout the film, I kept thinking this is like a weaker version of a Guy Ritchie film. So I don't know if that means his craft is a bit outdated for these modern times, or if it's just outdated for my sensibility now. It is loosely based off the true story of an undercover unit who takes out Nazis. So if you want a fun action movie of like hot men killing Nazis, then check it out. Number 61, Moana 2. You can kind of tell, at least I was able to tell for this movie, where the TV plots were cut up and restrung together. I think it was very clunky and all over the place. I didn't think it was very good. I think the songs were really bad. If you've seen the first Moana, you know, it's a fun movie. Moana 2, I feel like just undid everything about the first movie in terms of its message, where it's kind of like, hey, it's okay to leave and venture out because we need to find our community. We need to go find other islands and find other people. But literally this movie opens up with Moana being the only person being the wayfinder and finding people, or like searching islands. I was like, what happened to like leading your people? Like, what happened? I don't know. So also the sister just came out. Anyway, number 60, Lisa Frankenstein. This is a directorial debut by Zelda Williams, and I can definitely tell that it was a first-time director movie, but I still enjoyed it. It's about a young girl who is in love with this, like, you know, dead person. It's a person in a cemetery. You don't really know them, but it's a gothic fascination. And she's like, oh, I wish you were alive and we could, like, you know, be together. And zap, somehow the person in the grave does come alive, played by Cole Sprouse. It's a little wacky, you know, this like dead person trying to like live again and fall in love with this girl. I wish the first 2/3 of the movie went as hard as the third act. It was like a little too safe and too much setup in the first 2/3, and I want to see more undead shenanigans. It wasn't as weird as I hoped it would be. Number 59, Citizen of a Kind. This is a Korean film that I saw on a plane, and when I saw the poster and I read the premise, I thought, oh, this is gonna fucking rip. It's based off the true story of a woman who works at a laundromat, and she falls for a phone scam and loses a lot of money, so she takes it on her own to find the scammer and like punish them. And you would think this is gonna be like, oh cool, it's gonna be like a crazy like heist movie in a sense. But this movie moves at a snail's pace. It takes way too long for things to happen. I understand trying to build circumstances, but I feel like things can be accomplished in way less screen time. I was like looking for this ensemble cast like joining together, you know, but a little all over the place. I don't think it's a bad watch, but it's just fine. Number 58, Wonderland. Wonderland has a fascinating concept. It is set in this future where there is a company that can create realistic AI of your loved ones, and you can sign up for a service where they call you as if they were still alive, and they're like, hey, I'm in like studying school in London. Oh, hey, like I'm an astronaut in space. I miss you, you know, I can't wait to see you soon. And you talk to them as if like, you know, they're still alive, you're gonna see them soon, and you can pay real money to send them gifts. It's insane. I think it's a really fascinating concept. However, there's too many plot lines in this film. One's about an archaeologist who's trying to stay in contact with her daughter, and it's like, oh, which one is the AI? One is about the developers who use the technology, and they kind of hint at like, oh, like one of them is using it for unhealthy reasons or whatever. And then the third one was the one I was most invested in. Is about this girl who's talking to her boyfriend, and then her actual boyfriend, who was in a coma, wakes up. So like, what do you do when you have like coma boyfriend and like AI boyfriend, you know, like both try to talk to you? It's like, I was like, holy moly, that's like an ethical conundrum. But because the movie just kept trying to like sparse all these different plot lines and then they merged them in a really clumsy way, it kind of just fell off for me. But I like the idea of it. Number 57, Cuckoo. Cuckoo is a very weird movie. It was something I was super looking forward to. It follows a young girl played by Hunter Schafer, and her dad got a new job like in some mysterious resorts all the way up in the mountains somewhere, and the whole family moves and she doesn't get along with her adopted sister. Weird things are happening, like she's not allowed to like, you know, be at the resort at a certain time. She needs to go home at a certain time. It has a very cool atmosphere and setup, but the payoff's really weird. As I mentioned earlier about horror movies, when the mythos or the lore or whatever is revealed, it can make or break it. And this one made sense, but I didn't really care. It became less scary for me and it wasn't as fun. I think emotionally it was very good, as horror movies can be often about a person overcoming their grief or fear or their past through supernatural means. But ultimately I was a little disappointed. Dan Stevens also was great though as the villain, so yeah, but unfortunately Cuckoo did not live up to my hopes. Number 56, Drive Away Dolls. This movie's about two young lesbian friends who go on a road trip together, but the car that they rented has something that these men in suits are looking for, so they are being like tracked down. It's pretty funny and it's pretty interesting. For me, the movie wasn't as quirky as I'd like it to be. I thought it was a little muted, if that makes sense. I think the performances are all wonderful, although Margaret Qualley looks like a female Timothée Chalamet. It's not mainstream, entertaining, or exciting in like an action or heist film kind of way, but it's not nearly as funny as I thought it could be as well, which is unfortunately why it was lower in the year. But I wanted to acknowledge it because I thought it was well made and I think it deserves attention. Number 55, Immaculate. So, oh boy, this movie. Everyone, all these reviews saying like Sydney Sweeney is like an incredible actress. The first 2/3 of the movie, I was like, I don't get it. What is this? This like, these are the weirdest line deliveries. I'm just so bored. Sydney Sweeney plays as a nun who just joins this new church. And but the church's a little weird. Something's going on. Everyone's kind of like jealous or obsessed with her. What's happening? But there's no rhyme or reason or logic to the scares. Once the mythos and the lore is revealed, I think back to it and I'm like, why did those scares happen? Like, what was the point of that? It just felt pointless. The third act of the movie is a completely different movie from the first 2/3, but it fucking ripped. I thought it was awesome. Everything in this movie is worth enduring to that third act. And that's when I was like, oh, okay. Sydney Sweeney needs to play more roles like this, like, in my opinion. Not the spookiest movie, but definitely an intense one for sure. Number 54, Kung Fu Panda 4. It's kind of a mess, but it's not the worst one in the franchise. I mean, 3, it's way better than 3 in my opinion. Animation's great, but the TLDR, Poe is the master now, but he doesn't really want to be the master. And so he's trying to stop a villain who can steal other people's Kung Fu abilities. And he teams up with this young fox girl played by Awkwafina. And you know, they go fight, save the day together, whatever, blah. I did really enjoy the B story of Poe's dads being so worried for Poe, they go on a journey together to follow him and make sure he's okay. I love it. I love that part. None of the, you know, the 5 masters, like the previous characters, are in it. Like, they're in the credits. It's really weird. In my opinion, you just can't beat Kung Fu Panda 2. Number 53, Spy Family Code White. It's a very safe anime movie. And what I mean by that, usually anime movies are adapted from ongoing or existing series, are super inconsequential. They repeat a lot of the jokes that already exist within the franchise just so that they can be safe and also introduce the franchise to new people who have never seen it before. But it's fun. If you had never seen or read Spy Family, you could watch this movie just fine. They introduce it immediately. Like, they kind of narrate what all the characters' deal is and what's going on. It's fun. Action's cool. The middle part's way too long. However, there is a scene in there where Anya, the young girl, convenes with the god of poop, and it is the funniest thing I've ever seen. It sounds insane, but yeah. Number 52, Trapezium. This is a Japanese animated film about a young girl who wishes to be an idol. She wants to form an idol group and, be on the screen and be a star or whatever. So she makes friends, and I say makes friends with 3 other girls, because what's weird about this movie is I am following the story of a sociopath. You're watching this girl manipulate these other girls thinking that they're forming genuine friendships, but she just wants to use them to form a group. And she has this complex, you learn pretty quickly that she has this complex that she can't accomplish things alone. So she needs to do it in a group, and she doesn't care about if the other girls want to be idols or not. So honestly, it's why, even though this movie is very frustrating to watch, because holy moly, this protagonist is mean. She is really mean-spirited and just says all these nasty things to her friends, and I'm just kind of like, holy shit, like, what is going on here? But I can't stop watching. Unfortunately, the songs aren't very good. You would think for an idol movie, the songs would be good. I know the main, the credits song, they got the VTuber Suisei to do the main theme. So now, from my understanding, this film is written by a former idol. So that part of it fascinates me, because I wonder how much of it is reflected on behavior or mannerisms that they themselves exhibited or seen in other people. So I like thinking about that kind of aspect. Number 51, Piece by Piece. It's the Pharrell Williams documentary, but made in Lego, which I respect him for, because if someone was like, hey Jay, you want to make a documentary about your life? I'm like, yeah, put it in Lego form. It's fine. It's not a very interesting documentary, and I also think it's very doctored to be one-sided, but I like looking at Lego. That's the only reason why it's on here. Number 50, Alien Romulus. It could have been great, but very disappointing. All the cool stuff was in the trailers, and in my opinion, really boring rehash of the original. It's a Lego sequel or Lego requel or whatever, where it's kind of like a new entry to the franchise, but trying to be its own thing, but it's doing the exact same things as the first film, so Number 49, Wicked. If you're not familiar with the Broadway musical, this is about the story of the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz. It was fine. It's a little too long, a little muted. I kind of wish that they advertised that this was a part 1. I did not know that going in, and it just blares part 1 on the screen. Musically and visually, I think this is a bummer compared to the director's other works. If you've seen In the Heights, I think that was a really fun musical movie, and this was just fine. Well performed. I think Ariana Grande is hilarious as Glinda, but other than that, I'm not really thinking about it. Number 48, Ghost Cat Anzu. Now this is a really cute movie, but truly nothing goes on. It's about a young girl whose dad drops her off at her grandparents or at a shrine, and then at the shrine there is this big old cat that's walking around on standing up straight, named Anzu, and they're like, who is that? Like, that's Ghost Cat Anzu, and he's just a cat who's just helping taking care of the shrine and doing chores around town. And she's like, I don't like this cat, he's weird. They slowly get along, and not much happens in this movie until within the 3rd act. There's this whole plot line about going to the underworld, where I'm like, what is happening in this movie? And it was kind of entertaining, and then the movie just kind of ends. It's a very cute movie, but truly, it's not even a good slice of life in my opinion. Just nothing happens. Number 47, Heretic. I think the first half of this film is more interesting than the second half. This is about 2 Mormon girls who go around and they're, trying to spread their word of their religion, and they knock on the door of a person who's played by Hugh Grant. and he invites them in, and they have a big theological discussion, and a hilarious conversation about ranking fast food chains. Yeah, and then there's something weird about the house. Like, you know, they're not really, like, it's creepy. Like, this guy's a little too into their religion, but also wants to prove them wrong. Like, what's going on here? And then it becomes a really different movie. So the best way I can summarize this is the first half is a really interesting theological debate. And then the second half is like, okay, like, this is like being unnecessary. If anything, the cast's performance is incredible. I think all of them were really good. I know Hugh Grant was the standout, but the other two, Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, are so good. I was like blown away by everyone. Number 46, Ultraman Rising. This is another entry in the series. It's about a young boy who doesn't really want to be Ultraman. He doesn't want to be the mass-shifting superhero that fights kaiju and defends Japan. He just wants to play baseball. But then all that changes where he finds a young kaiju baby, and he's like, well, okay, I guess I'm gonna take care of this baby now. I think the plot is solid. I think it's very sweet. I think the animation looks great. I think the female lead is pretty great. It didn't wow me. I'm not thinking about it too much. It was a very solid movie. Number 45, My Name is Lo Ki-wan. This movie is about a North Korean escapee named Lo Ki-wan who finally makes his way to Belgium to apply for the North Korean like rescuee program. But there is a whole thing of like, hey, you entered Belgium through China. Like, are you secretly a Chinese person pretending to be a North Korean escapee? So he needs to prove that in court and whatnot. That storyline I'm like so into. I was like, whoa, this is fascinating. I wasn't aware of this. Like, this was a real thing, but like, wow. And like, it's just so sad that he just has no one, and he has to like wait like 2 months for his court appeal. So he's trying to like work to make money, but he doesn't speak the language, you know? And then there's the other plot line where he meets this girl, like a former Olympic pistol shooter, and she like won medals before or something, and she's like now like in an underground ring where people bet on who can shoot targets better, and she's like, oh man, she's part of this Belgian gang and whatnot, and but she's only part of it because she owes money. That's why she stole from the North Lo Ki-wan. I'm like, this is weird. This is a completely different movie. But the two of them like fall in love and try to help each other survive. But whenever the stories like cross over, I'm like, dude, stop. Get this like Belgium gang shit out of here. I don't care. Like, this is so weird. What is this? And I want to know about his court appeal. I want to know about that process. You know, I want to know what else he's doing to survive, and like the community and the friends he's making, people that he's meeting in the community to survive. Like, that interested me more. The romance is fine, it's forced. But you know, it's an interesting watch. Number 44, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. It's easily my favorite of the franchise. The Sonic movies are, you know, catered in a certain way. It's like family friendly, and they kind of like twist and change some of the lore to make it more accessible or whatever for mainstream. I'm not expecting any like groundbreaking things, but for this movie to introduce Shadow the Hedgehog, I am very impressed. I thought Keanu Reeves' performance as Shadow is really fun. I think Shadow's backstory is very good. I do wish that they showed it way earlier, because I felt like the flashbacks were a little too sparse, and I kind of just wanted to see everything about it. You're kind of just like, why is this dude so angry and like punching everybody? And of course, there's a lot of nods to Sonic Adventure 2. Great beginning, very slow middle. A little too much Jim Carrey for me, but the end is incredible. There is a conversation between Sonic and Shadow that they have about how to overcome loss. Like, this scene is gold. Yeah, I really dug it. Number 43, Lover, Stalker, Killer. This is a very gripping true crime documentary about a man who goes on an online dating site and meets someone who, you know, seems cool first, and as the title suggests, ends up becoming a bit more deranged. It was definitely exciting, but it's tough because I couldn't tell if the craft of the documentary was exciting or more so about the story itself. If you like true crime and want to be like, wow, people can be a little something, then definitely check this out. Number 42, Problemista. The movie's about a boy from El Salvador who lives in New York and his dreams to become a toy maker. He's constantly applying to, Hasbro to try and get that job and make his dream come true, but he's just not getting it. And he gets fired from work from his day job and is about to lose his visa. So then he meets little strange, quirky woman played by Tilda Swinton. He's like, okay, if I work for you, can you sponsor me for my visa? And she's like, yeah, we can talk about that. So he's like, okay, this is all I can do now. And it's about him and her trying to understand each other in this insane world. I thought it was very good. It's a Julio Torres movie, if you're familiar. He plays the lead character and he wrote and directed the movie. He most famously, I would say, wrote the Papyrus sketch from SNL. The movie is very fun in an odd way. I definitely thought it was a nice watch for sure. And I'm curious to see more movies from this director. Number 41, Rebel Ridge. This was recommended to me from a friend who thought I would enjoy this. And this is a very, very slow burn action thriller movie. When I say very slow, it's a lot of buildup. It's about this guy who's on his bike. In his backpack, he's got a bunch of cash. It's bail money, all money that he withdrew from the bank. He's just on his way to bail his cousin out of prison. And then he gets stopped by some cops who basically detain him. We think this money is received unlawfully, so we're just gonna confiscate it. And so he goes to the town, to the police precinct, and he's like, okay, I need that money back to bail my cousin out of prison. They're not giving it back because, racist and rude reasons. And it's just the slow build of him just being like, I am going to ruin these people's lives. And it's really well performed, really well made. I really enjoyed it, but it's not high intense action. Even when shit goes off, it's not like John Wick guns blazing, but it's still really neat. I thought it was great. Number 40, My Hero Academia, You're Next. Honestly, not the worst of the My Hero movies. This is the fourth My Hero movie, my favorite being number 2, and if you think that's the worst one, you're crazy. It's interesting because the plot of this, it kind of mirrors the Overhaul arc from season 4. This is set between season 6 and 7, I think. The leader of this Italian mob believes he's the next big superhero, just like All Might. And they're like, oh, he kind of looks like All Might. And so he's like, I'm gonna change the world. They're trying to look for a girl who has this quirk who can make their powers stronger. It's up to Deku and friends and the new character to try and protect them. Similar to Overhaul, Yakuza gang kidnaps girl who can get rid of powers, but they want to use that to monopolize powers and change the world, blah, blah, up to Deku and friends to save the girl. It's really similar, but I felt like it was a much better version of that storyline. The students get to do more. It's less about, for a show called My Hero Academia, my biggest complaint is always that it's not always about the students. And I'm kind of let the kids do things. There was a part where I thought was the final fight. And I thought it was great. It was, classic anime fashion. The characters voice what their ideal is and how they've grown and why the villain is wrong. And they do that against the main villain, and it's cool. I was like, oh, I was getting a little emotionally swept up. This is great. This reminds me of early My Hero. And then, like anime or JRPG, the boss turns into a big hulking monster, his second form or whatever, my final form, and they have an even bigger fight. And it's the type of fighting where they run so fast they all turn into orbs and just fly around the screen, and I'm just like, is this hype? I feel like the theater I was watching with people were like, oh my god, so cool, whoa, this is what good animation is. I too wish I could be a cat looking at a laser pointer. Number 39, Venom: The Last Dance. This is the third and final entry into the Tom Hardy Venom series. I like those movies, I, as a Spider-Man fan, I actually don't like Venom, the comic book character. I think he's kind of boring. Artistically, he's neat, but as a character, I hate Spider-Man. The end. In this franchise, he's just a weird goofball, and I think it's so fun, this harmonious, in my opinion, really gay relationship between Eddie Brock and Venom. All the Eddie and Venom parts in this movie, I love seeing them talk about how much they love being with each other and hanging out and like in their friendship, and then when they work together when they're fighting, like that's cool. But like 90% of this movie is about all these other characters, like this military man who's like, oh, all aliens are bad. This scientist lady's like, ooh, we should study them, you know, like, and this is my tragic backstory about why I study things. I'm like, who the fuck are these losers? Who cares? It's such a bummer that this is how the series ends. Number 38, Longlegs. I was terrified watching this movie. I was very stressed out. I thought it was really well made and really sick, but it's really disappointing. This movie is about an FBI agent who is trying to track down a cultist serial killer that goes by the name Longlegs, who is played by Nicolas Cage. I think Nicolas Cage's performance is incredible. I think Micah Monroe, who is the FBI agent, who is also in It Follows, is also wonderful. The problem is, I think we see too much Nicolas Cage. I think we see him too much too early, and he's also not in the movie very long. As the mystery is unraveling, I was kind of like, what? Like, so what? This seems like an unnecessary step. Again, really neat movie, but ultimately just really disappointing, especially that third act. It just felt super unnecessary, which is disappointing because I was really looking forward to this movie. Number 37, La Chimera. This is an Italian film about a man who is an archaeologist but is also a grave robber. So he just meets up with his old grave robbing buddies, and they just look in graves and whatnot and try to find some old treasures, which sounds exciting, but it's this felt more like a slice of life movie for me, and also very Italian cinema. I was thinking about Bicycle Thieves all over again, but I really liked it. I thought it was great. It has a very poetic sense to it, about this man who's, you know, just trying to look to the past but doesn't want to look at his own past. It's not a recommendation for everybody, but if you are curious about a film that's more artsier or more, you know, cinema-like, then this might be worth checking out for you. Number 36, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. Look, if you've seen the marketing and trailer for this, you're like, this is fucking stupid. And I went in and be like, this is gonna be ridiculous. It was stupid fun. It's great because there's less human plot, WWE craziness, like the way Kong just picks up these other monsters and just throwing them around, and Godzilla's just tackling shit. It's ridiculous, but I had a good time. Kong's first encounter, like his first big fight in the movie against 3 other like giant apes, I was cackling from how insane that was. If you just want a good action time, definitely check it out. Number 35, The First Omen. This movie is beautiful. It has some of the most astonishing visuals and direction I've seen in a long time. It's so incredibly well acted. It is creepy. It's intense. Got a weird atmosphere about it that I really dug. But then the end of the movie kind of ruins it. Unfortunately, it's because it's a prequel, so it has to connect to the first movie. But I'm like, oh, I wish we could just forget the franchise for a second. It was clearly going in a specific direction, and it didn't. If you have seen both The First Omen and Immaculate, a lot of people have pointed out that there's similarity between the two. And as I was watching both of them, I'm like, yeah, these movies are literally the same story, except the first 2/3 of The First Omen rule, but the third act is bad. And Immaculate, the first 2/3 are boring as hell, but the last third fucking rips. So I'm like, I wish I could just like splice these two movies together. Still, if you're a horror fan, still worth watching. Number 34, Will and Harper. This is a super heartwarming and wholesome documentary about Will Ferrell and best friend Harper Steele going on a road trip together and reconnecting after Harper came out to Will and their friend group saying that she transitioned. You can really see their friendship in this movie, and it's really sweet how Will Ferrell really wanted to handle this well, and Harper was just happy that one of her closest friends still wanted to be friends. I really recommend this. It's very sweet, and it's just nice to see both of their experiences going through this journey together. Number 33, We Live in Time. In this film, Andrew Garfield plays a man who is recently divorced, and he meets Florence Pugh, who is like an up-and-coming chef. They start getting into this relationship. The story itself is not that crazy, but their performances are so immersive. Like, I was sucked into their relationship and I was so curious where it was gonna go and what had happened. Because the movie is told non-linearly, they'll just drop information at random points in time. I loved both those actors very much, so it's really cool to see their dynamic like this. Number 32, Perfect Days. Perfect Days is a Japanese film about a man who has a very simple job of cleaning public restrooms. And he goes every morning, he has a set routine of going around Tokyo and hitting up all the public restroom spots and just cleaning them. This is a very true slice of life film, but I thought it was incredible. There's not a huge plot or anything. It's just this man like going about his day and the people that he meets and runs into. I thought it was very beautiful. Number 31, Inside Out 2, the sequel to Inside Out. I was like, why do we need one? But it was surprisingly well told. I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. It was nice to see Riley and her emotions deal with a new emotion of anxiety, and it's fascinating. I was thoroughly impressed. Number 30, Hitman. Glenn Powell just playing a bunch of different types of people is hilarious. Loosely based off the true story of a professor who moonlights as a fake hitman to help police stings. And it's pretty interesting where he's kind of like, he gets so into the role of being this hitman, you know, and he convinces other people that he can pull off these hits, and then the police intervene and arrest the people. It's like, hey, that's premeditated murder that you're about to do. Things get a little dicey when he gets too involved with the client's life. So just seeing Glenn Powell go all over the place made this movie very memorable for me. Number 29, I Saw the TV Glow. This movie had a lot of strong direction and I wish it was higher on my list. It was something I was very looking forward to when it was out in theaters, but unfortunately I missed it because I was traveling a lot for work. I ended up seeing this on a plane, so it might not have been the best experience. I think the performances are wonderful and I think it has such a clear voice about inner identity and who are you, who you really are. Unfortunately, the movie didn't land as well with me as I hoped it would, but I still think about it. Maybe one day on a rewatch it'll be even higher on my list. Number 28, The Wild Robot. Beautifully animated, lost robot is stuck in the woods and grows and with the animals and ends up raising a duck, and it's a very sweet and sentimental story. I thought it was nice, but other than that, it didn't leave that much of an impression on me. I'm glad that movies like this can exist for sure though. Number 27, Transformers 1. A very interesting prequel and new origin for these characters, but I really liked it. It's the most personality that Transformers have had on screen. It didn't blow me away, but I really liked seeing it, and as a Transformers fan, I just like seeing the characters. Number 26, Late Night with the Devil. Really rad concept. This film is framed in a way where it's like, hey, this is the live recording of what happened on this horrible night, where a talk show host, in order to boost ratings, brought on like a real, like supposedly possessed person onto the show. Unfortunately, the movie kind of breaks that format and shows like the behind the scenes, right? Which I get it for character context, but I kind of would have liked to just see the talk show like portion the whole time. The ending's a little disappointing. It's not a bad ending, but it's not as nearly as interesting as the movie was. Incredible performance by David Dastmalchian. I definitely recommend checking this out. It's such a cool concept. Number 25, Smile 2. I don't know if I like this more than Smile 1, but this film was really, really fun. This picks up right after Smile 1 and follows the curse of if you see this person smiling and you witness a horrible death, then the curse passes on to you and will kill you in a few days. Very like Ring-like. And for this film, the curse is now following a pop star, like a huge idol in this world, which is fascinating because that premise alone, I was like, oh my god, like a famous person is being haunted by a curse. Like, how is this gonna affect them and what's gonna happen? My only thing with this film is I wish it got to it quicker. In the first film, the protagonist was like intent on solving the mystery, so every scene was basically about trying to add on to the mystery and the lore. As someone who's seen the first film and is now watching the second film, I know what's going on. So like, it's just it's realistic in the sense that the protagonist for Smile 2 isn't believing any of this, you know, and would take like a normal, you know, a longer amount of time to accept her, you know, what's going on. But I just want to get into it. Once it gets in though, it starts ramping up. It just moves. I do feel like in terms of scares, it was a little overtly reliant on jump scares, but there are some really cool horror visuals in this film worth checking out. Number 24, Monkey Man. Very neat directorial debut by Dev Patel. It's like, you know, marketed like the Indian John Wick, and they literally make a John Wick joke in the movie. The action's really neat, but it kind of takes a while to build up to it. The setup is very good. I personally felt the middle slowed down a lot. I don't think it was unnecessary. I just thought it was a little too long. I definitely think it is worth checking out. There is a reason why Jordan Peele saw this film and was like, this is just going to Netflix? No, we're bringing this to the screen. Number 23, Deadpool and Wolverine. It's a very fun love letter to the Fox superhero movies. Great performances from Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. It's cool to see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine again. And a lot of the Marvel movies right now have been kind of stinkers, and I say that as like a comic book fan and a comic book movie fan. This was fun. This was really neat, and of course, I am forever going to remember a very specific cameo performance. I'm not gonna say it here, although if you haven't seen it online, I don't know how you managed to avoid it. There's a specific cameo that I'm like, oh my god, I have not stopped thinking about these lines. So I think I laughed harder than anyone in that theater, like for multiple reasons. So number 22, Love Lies Bleeding. Very raw, very cool. Kristen Stewart plays this gym manager who doesn't really want to make friends or anything, but one day she meets this like ambitious bodybuilder who's played by Katie O'Brien, and she's like, oh, and they clearly have chemistry with each other, so they get into a relationship and whatnot. Bodybuilder, she has this dream of like competing in Las Vegas for this competition. You know, things go ham when they both get involved with like, you know, Kristen Stewart's sister is like experiencing domestic violence, and the bodybuilder's like, what if I intervened? And then things kind of go out of hand, and there's like, oh my god, like we're involved in like a crime thing, and it just goes nuts. A bit of magical surrealism, but who doesn't love that? I love like wonky interpretations of reality. Number 21, The Fall Guy. I didn't think this was gonna be as fun as it was. It's a huge love letter to stunt double acting in movies. Ryan Gosling plays a guy who is a stunt double. He gets involved in a string of mysteries where the star of the film is missing, and he's the stunt double for that star, so he's got to find them. And using his stunt skills, he's like got to fight, dodge, like car chase, a bunch of like things happen. It's really neat. I thought it was really cool. I really recommend checking out. Definitely a surprise for this year. Number 20, Flow. Beautiful movie. This is about a black cat at the end of the world who is trying to survive the world flooding. This cat makes friends along the way with like a capybara, a lemur, a dog, big old like heron of sorts. I think it's really well made, really well told. And what's impressive is storytelling with like absolutely zero dialogue. There are no like celebrity voice actors. It is just animal sounds. The way I was thinking about this movie is like, you could replace this entire plot with humans and it's still like a good story. This is just better because it's animals. I could imagine the conversation humans would have in this situation. It's just amazing. Number 19, Nosferatu. So Nosferatu is my final film of the year that I watched. Unfortunately, I wish I liked it more. It is a retelling of the original Nosferatu movie, which is based off of Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's a Robert Eggers movie. It's not my favorite of his films. The Witch is still my favorite, and I felt like this doesn't go as weird or as hard. The performances are great. All the actors are incredible. I just wish it was spookier. I just wish there was like more to it. I guess that kind of goes with like Eggers' gothic horror style, where it's kind of like, it sometimes is a little less exciting for me, but it's still neat to watch. Number 18, Trap. This is an M. Night Shyamalan film, but the twist is like, it's really early in the film. It's about a dad who takes his daughter to like a big pop concert, right? And they're like, okay, cool, I'll be right back, honey, I'm gonna get some snacks. And he's like walking around the venue, and he's noticing a lot of cops, and he's like talking to people and be like, workers, like, hey, like, what's going on here, right? It's like, oh, hey, did you hear about, like, okay, so I'm not supposed to tell anyone, but you heard about that serial killer, right? It's like, yeah, what about him? And it's like, well, apparently this whole concert is just a sting operation. Like, they somehow found out that the serial killer is gonna be at this concert. They're not letting anyone out. And then Dad's like, oh, that's interesting. Wow, okay, I hope they catch the guy. And then he goes to the bathroom and he takes out his phone, and you can see on his phone, it's a live feed camera of a basement where he kidnapped someone. And it's like, he's the serial killer. So that's like within the first 5 minutes of the film. And it's about this dad who's a serial killer who thought he was just taking his daughter to a concert, but now he's like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. And it is really entertaining. I was like, holy shit, this is fucking fun. My biggest gripe with this movie is the third act, there's a confrontation that I didn't really feel like was necessary. They're trying to add too much logic, which I get. I understand they need to answer certain questions, but still, I had a really good time with this movie. If they make another, I'm totally down to see more. Number 17, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. It just rips. It's just good. It's a really good time. It's fucking sick. I loved Mad Max Fury Road, and this is also cool. I thought a prequel, I don't know, but oh my god, this looks great. It was neat. I was hollering. You gotta watch it. Number 16, The Concierge. This is a Japanese animated film about a woman who works at an animal hotel, and all the animals in this world, you know, they speak. It's really cute. It's such a sweet and wholesome movie, and this concierge is trying to do her best, trying to connect with these animal customers, and like got such a lovable cast of like supporting characters. I was so engrossed. I wish there was an art book for this movie because I just want to look at all the little animal characters. Truly love this movie, and I think it's very worth checking out. Number 15, Exhuma. Exhuma is a Korean film about modern shamans. It's fucking cool. I don't want to give away too much, but you have like young modern shamans, a mortician, a geomancer. During performing a ritual, they stumble upon a spiritual mystery that's haunting people, and like, what's going on here, and they're trying to solve it. And it's a mix of horror and thriller, but it's like it's spooky, but I feel like it's more of a mystery, and it's just fucking cool. Great performances all around. If you watch a lot of Korean movies and K-dramas, you'll see a lot of familiar actors in it. More. I want to see this gang solve more mysteries and whatnot, and deal with more curses. It's really fun. Number 14, Thelma. Oh my goodness. This is one of the funniest movies I've seen all year. It's about an old lady, a grandma. She's like in her 90s, and she gets well with her grandson, but her parents are like, maybe it's time to put her in a retirement home, like she's getting old and whatnot. And because Thelma falls for a phone scam. She falls for, similar to like Citizen of a Kind, right? But she falls for a phone scam. She already mailed her money, and she's like, okay, like, let's go get them. And they're like, no, we should leave this to the police, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, watches Mission Impossible. And it's like, Tom Cruise does all the stunts? I can do this myself. So it's just her going on an adventure to find the fucking scammers. And it's like, it's amazing. The score is themed like a spy movie, but it's like the action, it's not like she's doing any insane acrobatics or actions. She's just doing her normal things, but it's just like they put spy music on the background, and it's like, wow, I'm so in. Like, hell yeah, go Thelma, let's go. Let's fucking get your money back. Really snuck up on my list this year. I saw it very late in the year, and wow, I wish I saw it way earlier. Number 13, How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies. On TikTok, when they released this in the Philippines, everyone's like the before and after, and everyone's like, yeah, cool, all right, this is probably gonna be a sad movie. And then after, people were like devastated. And yeah, I definitely was the same. But it is about a grandson who, doesn't really have money. Doesn't have a job or anything. And he's like, he's wondering like, maybe I can inherit something from grandma before she dies. So he's like just randomly out of the blue trying to like befriend her, and grandma's like, why are you visiting me? He's like, I'm just being a grandson. I love you, grandma. She's like, okay, whatever. And like, he's just like really taking care of her. And it's really interesting to see their relationship grow and seeing how other people treat his grandma. I really recommend it. The performances are incredible. This grandma is so sweet. And boy, oh boy, I'm crying thinking about it. Number 12, Kinds of Kindness. So I'm a big Yorgos Lanthimos fan. I love The Lobster, The Favorite, and Kinds of Kindness is basically kind of like an anthology. It is 3 stories in one movie. This movie mainly reuses the same actors: Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, Willem Dafoe, Margaret Qualley, Hong Chow, Joe Alwyn, and Mamoudou Athie. And there are other actors in the film as well. But in these 3 fables, there are very different stories that are very slightly connected. The first story is about a man who wants to keep his job, and his boss telling him, okay, well, I need you to like run into this guy's car, like with your car. Really weird. The second film is like, hey, like my wife suddenly returned after being missing at sea for months. And they're like, isn't she great that she's back? And he's like, that's not her. They're like, what are you talking about? Third story being about trying to find someone who's meant to be a religious cult leader. It's weird. It's hard to explain this film. And if you like Yorgos Lanthimos movies, if you like really weird shit, then check this out. I love it, but his films are not always the easiest recommendation. You know, they're a little too strange or a little too surreal for people. Number 11, Civil War. This film is about war journalists surviving in a semi-apocalyptic America where the states are kind of fighting each other due to political reasons. It's a little spooky and eerie because I was like, it feels very real to our situation. Definitely feel like this movie was kind of like, hey, this is what could happen. These war journalists, as they're traveling through the country, you know, and people just, you know, they're like, hey, I'm a war journalist, don't shoot me, you know, because people gotta see what's happening in the country. You see some towns where they just ignore all the politics of the world and they just don't care. You see some towns where they are really grilling you. Where are you really from? It gets really unsettling. But again, I recommend. I thought it was great, really well told. And here we are to the top 10. All right, number 10, Conclave. So Conclave is about inner workings of all these priests gathering together to decide who the new pope is, and it is so engaging, really immersive. Like, I didn't think I cared about Catholic Pope politics, but it's fucking cool. If you've had any religious upbringing, especially in like Christianity, Catholicism and whatnot, this is a fascinating watch. Yeah, I love seeing the dynamics of all these characters and the way they're interacting and why, you know, some characters like, I think I deserve to be Pope because XYZ. Oh, I've like for real sin, I should not be Pope. I was so into it and it was really fun, really exciting. I am surprised more people haven't been talking about it. Number 9, Didi. Didi is about a young Taiwanese American boy who is about to enter high school. And so it's set in the summer before high school and he's just hanging out with his friends. This kid just trying to, impress the girl that he likes, impress the cool skateboarders that he made friends with, and also having complicated relationships with his family members, his mom, his sister, his grandma. And it's a very real movie. Remember the time you've been a stupid teenager and you did stupid shit? This is it. Number 8, Robot Dreams. This is an animated film that has no dialogue. It is about a lonely dog living in New York City. He sees an ad for a robot companion. He orders his own robot companion and he's like, wow, I have a friend. And it's about their friendship, living in the city together, and how their friendship just falls apart. I feel like it mirrors what it's like living in New York a lot, the loneliness of a city. People say the city's crowded, but it's, I never felt more lonelier in my life. Just a really powerful film. And I highly recommend this one. Number 7, Haikyuu, the dumpster battle. This is a biased pick, but Haikyuu, the volleyball series, is incredible. One of my favorite anime and manga series of all time. This is a movie that follows up after season 4 because the animation production has confirmed they're no longer doing the TV series. They're gonna wrap up the rest of the manga in 2 movies, so it's a little disappointing. For that, I do have to dock it down a bit because it feels like a compilation movie, but the emotions are so high. I love these characters so much. It makes sense that this arc was a single movie. This movie looks great. They got the original director from season 1 and 3. There is a POV shot in this film that I still think about I was like, this is a very bold choice to make this scene a POV shot. And it is incredible. You could get away with watching just like season 1 or like even the beginning half of season 2. But of course, you'll enjoy the whole thing if you followed Haikyuu from the beginning. So check out Haikyuu. Number 6, It's What's Inside. I love this movie. It's an absolute riot of a good time. Incredible cast. Like these actors are amazing. Wow. And it must have been so fun for them to do this movie. Old college friends gather together for the night before one of their friends gets married. An unexpected guest shows up with a little game. That's all I'm gonna say. I say go into this movie as blind as possible. It is so cool. It definitely gives me vibes of Bodies, 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 but I like this way better. I think it's way stronger. It's so good. It actually was in my top 5. However, I thought I saw another film that technically could fit into 2024, which I'm about to say next. So I was like, okay, I kind of have to drop this down a bit. It's What's Inside is one of the best movies I've seen on streaming this year. Number 5, Hundreds of Beavers. You heard that right, Hundreds of Beavers. So technically this film was made in 2022, but it had its official digital release in 2024 this year. So technically this counts as a 2024 movie in my opinion. There is nothing like this movie. Black and white and shot in a really weird VFX composition style. It almost looks kind of like Mad World-y, like it's very like janky, but it's incredible. It is about a man who wants to win the heart of this woman and her, but the woman's father says, if you fight 100 beavers and bring me their pelts, then I will maybe consider you could marry her. And he's like, all right, time to go fight 100 beavers. And it is hilarious. There's no dialogue in the film. It is just pure chaos. It is just really silly, and I think that's its strength. Number 4, The Substance. If you're gonna watch any horror this year, any horror, thriller, suspense, that kind of feel, I think this movie absolutely rips. Demi Moore plays this person who used to be like a hot young actress, and now she's getting older, and people just don't wanna, work with her anymore. They want to find younger and newer people, and she's like kind of bummed out about it. And she finds this thing called The Substance. It's like the service, and she's not sure about it at first, but then when she tries it, The Substance, it's like a weird black market drug, basically clones you to makes you a perfect younger version of yourself. But you both share like a same, like you're both on like a time limit, so you can't both exist at the same time. It's I don't want to explain too much of it, but you should just go in. Incredible performance from Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley. They are wild. I mean, there's an obscene amount of body horror, and I'm just gonna warn you right now, it's really gross looking. But like the way like people eat food, they like close in on it, and it's like, yeah, like people are gross, man. One of the coolest, hardest third acts I've ever seen in any film. Holy moly, more films need to go wild and unhinged like The Substance's third act. The most metal thing I've ever seen. Number 3, Anora. Anora is about a sex worker who basically gets her fairy tale romance. She gets to finally leave her work, and after meeting this like really rich Russian kid who's like the son of someone famous, all seems well, and then at later on in the movie, she finds out that her husband's parents are not a huge fan of this marriage, and she needs to fight for her love and prove that it's real. It is heartwarming, it's tragic, it's gorgeous, it can be a bummer, but also very uplifting and hopeful. I didn't know what to expect going in. I knew nothing going in, and I was just absolutely wowed by this film. It's an incredible peek at like how people fall in love and why they fall in love, and what are the reasons that you want to be connected to someone. What are the reasons that you are so confident about your relationship and love. All this to say is I just feel like these really raw emotions were really well written and well thought out and incredibly acted by Mikey Madison. Holy moly, like she is so good in this film. This movie has one of the funniest New York City montages I've ever seen. There's like a whole super long series of scenes of just going around New York and just arguing with people. And I don't want to give the full context because it's just a group of people just running around, just driving cars, just trying to just talk to people, and they're just arguing, and it's incredible. I was cracking up. I was like, where did this movie go? I love it. And it's, I knew it had to be in the top for sure. It is just amazing. Number 2, Challengers. Challengers was my number 1 for the longest time this year. I felt like this is a movie that completely is for me. It's got tennis, a good representation of tennis and its mentality, that it's not just about hitting good or, swing hard, but it's about why are you obsessed with this game? Like, what do you think about it? What is the mentality of being on the court and reading someone's hits, and how do you respond? And I'm like, yeah, it gets what it means to be a tennis player. And it's a lot of like, holy moly, raging bisexual energy. Like, oh my God, this love triangle is just dirty in the craziest way. And I was eating it all up. I was like, holy moly, this movie's so crazy. It's so stressful, but wow. Incredible performances from the entire cast all around. And yeah, it's the drama is real and the action is so good. I don't think tennis has ever looked so good on screen. I love that final shot. That final shot and final line fucking rules. Like, that's it. That's what the movie's about. So you might be wondering though, if you love this movie so much, why is it number 2 and not number 1? Well, number 1, Look Back. I think for many reasons that this has to be number 1 is it's so personal. I was already familiar with the events because I've read the manga. Look Back, if you haven't read it or watched it, is about 2 young girls who aspire to make manga together. And they weren't always friends at first. And it's really touching, really beautiful. It's written by Fujimoto, who also wrote Chainsaw Man, which is wild. And I remember when the manga first came out, and it was during the pandemic, and it came out on a random summer day. And I was like, what is this? And I was like, oh, it's written by Chainsaw Man, dude. And I read it and I was like, holy moly. Like, I didn't know he could write things like this. It talks about what it means to be an artist. Why do people continue to draw? Who do they draw for? What is their intent with drawing? Is it be praised? Is it to improve your craft? Like, there's so many facets to this that I feel like speaks to a lot of creatives. And I think the movie did a really good job of adapting it. It's a very short watch. It's only 75 minutes. I know, wild that all movies have to be like 2 hours now for some fucking reason. When I saw it finally, it was a no-brainer that this was number 1 for many reasons. In some ways, I feel like it's personal for me in terms of my creative journey as well. Gorgeous animation, incredible acting all around. If you're a creative yourself or ever interested or fascinated by what creators go through, I highly recommend watching it. I think about it a lot. That was my top 75 2024 films. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think. Share some of your own recommendations if you like down below, or let me know what you checked out and or what you're looking forward to check out. This is always super fun to do, so I appreciate it. Hopefully next year will be better, so I don't have to rush watching 75 films. I can just watch an easy 50 and not think, oh my god, 3/4 of this list is dog water. But thanks again for watching. Bye.